pharmacists actually use this analogy of a mentor versus a sponsor. And I think that it's important for you to have both, right? You have someone that you can, on a frequent basis, you receive that mentorship from, but you also have someone like Sheila mentioned, that organic chemistry teacher who now seems to be a sponsor for her.
Welcome to the show. I am your host, Anyoh, and I spark the hard conversations that challenge questionable cultural and societal norms that threaten the well-being of the African community. And I also share stories about growing up as Africans in Africa and in the diaspora. I strongly believe that normalizing open discussions and sharing experiences, whether good or bad, will not only make you find your voice, but will broaden your sense of purpose and empower others to do the same. So if you have ever tried challenging certain African cultural and societal doctrines, or if you have ever felt like it is about time that we confronted these issues in our African community and do better as a people, or even if you have always been interested in learning about the experiences of other Africans growing up in Africa and the diaspora, then you are in the right place. Welcome to Living African. Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Living African. Today we will be talking about a very important topic that's very close to my heart because I have lived through it, and that is the international student experience in the United States. So the United States has been one, if not the most popular destination for young people coming from Africa to pursue further studies after high school. And these young people who are considered temporary non-immigrant visitors to the United States are also known as international students. So I actually originally came to America as an international student, and I know way many more people who did the same. And I have two of my friends here who actually shared a similar story to me, and I'm super excited for them to talk about their experiences, actually for us all to talk about our experiences and maybe help other people who are aspiring to come over to the United States. So I want to welcome Dr. Sheila Enoh and Dr. Idris Yakubu to this episode. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
How's it going?
Great. Well, doing great. How are you?
Doing great. I'm super excited to talk to you both. And I'll just start with the introductions. Like Dr. Sheila, can you please introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. Anyoh, thank you for having us on this platform. My name is Sheila Enoh. I'm currently an internal medicine resident at the Johns Hopkins Hospital. But prior to that, I went to undergrad at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill when I came to the U.S. Then I came to Baltimore, actually, to Johns Hopkins to get a Master's of Science in Public Health with a focus on international health. Then I went to medical school at the University of Pittsburgh.
Awesome. And also, you're originally from Cameroon, just like I am, born and raised. Yeah. So thank you very much, Dr. Enoh, and Dr. Idris Yakubu.
Thanks, Dr. Fombad. My name is Idris Yakubu. I went to pharmacy school in Toledo, Ohio with Dr. Fombad, and I did my pharmacy practice residency at University of Toledo Medical Center. And then I did my transplant specialization training at University of Maryland Medical Center. Currently practice as a transplant pharmacist at Virginia Commonwealth University Health System. I've been there now for 5 years and originally from Nigeria. So excited to be part of this podcast and sharing my experiences with you all.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. I mean, it's always a pleasure speaking with you guys. And like I said, I really look forward to this conversation because, I really look forward to reliving all those memories, whether good or bad, but at least it's going to help somebody. And so let's just start. I mean, there's so much to talk about. So let's just start with the whole application process. I mean, I know for sure the application process 10, 15 years ago to come to the United States, especially as an international student, probably is not the same. Like the application experience, I don't really want to say process, but just the whole experience and stuff, because a lot of things are way more stringent. But how was your application process like? Even prior to that, were you aware of like what you wanted to come to study in the United States? So I'll let Dr. Sheila start with that.
That's a great question. So I will start with the first question. Was I aware of what I wanted to study coming to the U.S.? So I always knew I wanted to be a doctor from the age of 7. So, being born and raised in Cameroon, at least for me, you are taught that to be a doctor, you need to do the sciences. So before coming to the US, I just was like, I'm going to do biology because that's what I thought that I needed to do to be a doctor.
Right.
That's not true, but that's what I thought. So I came to the US wanting to do biology, and I added a second major when I got to the US and realized that you didn't need to do biology to be a doctor. You can do anything and be a doctor. So I added psychology as my second major.
Wow.
So for the application process, my dad helped me a lot. I just remember I was in lower 6th or 11th grade when I started thinking about applying to school in the U.S. undergrad. Mm-hmm. And I remember my dad calling me this one day, and he had like this big catalog, because we had internet, but it wasn't that popular, you know?
Yeah.
So we had the catalog of U.S. news, like all the colleges, and we just sat down and went by like the rankings, because, you know, African parents, you just go by the rankings of colleges, and that's how we chose, and also schools that were good in biology. And he helped me a lot, like sending my applications. He helped edit my essays also, thank God for him. And Marco, also my older brother, who was already in college in the U.S., helped me edit my essay.
Right.
So I had some support, so that helped a lot.
Right. That's very interesting, because my dad as well. My dad was very resourceful in helping. I mean, my mom wasn't really around because she traveled for work. She works at the United Nations, so she was always out. But my dad was. We also had. I remember that catalog, and he was looking at schools. I mean, originally, funny enough, I had to go to school in the UK. I was actually had an admission in the UK. And it was like last minute that they just changed everything, and I had to come to, you know, the United States. But my dad was very, very resourceful towards, you know, the whole application experience. So what about you, Dr. Idris?
Yeah, so when I was in high school, my strengths were in the math and sciences. I loved physics a lot. I loved math and further math.
Right.
My options were something in the medical field or engineering. Right. And at some point, I was gravitating more towards engineering. I wanted to be like a computer engineer. But what really moved me into more medicine was a conversation I had with my dad. You know, I was going on a road trip with my dad, and he asked me, what are you going to do in college? And I said, I wanted to be an engineer. And the response was, we have too many engineers in the family.
Pick something else.
You know, but I think from a young age, I recognized that I did not want to be a physician. So I decided to, you know, from a young age, explore different other disciplines in healthcare, and pharmacy was one that was very intriguing to me. So coming into the U.S. for school, I knew I was going to pursue pharmacy. The application process was pretty much straightforward. My brother went to school in Canada in winter, and on one of the visits, my dad visited my brother in Canada. He visited a family friend in Toledo, and brought back a catalog of the University of Toledo's application and said,
awesome.
Hey, fill out this application. So, you know, essentially all I knew about University of Toledo and schooling abroad was reading that University of Toledo's catalog, filled out the application, got accepted. And once I started to complete the application process, I started to look into other schools as well in the U.S. And it was really almost based off of areas where you had family or family.
Right.
It was Toledo, Maryland. Those are the areas where I was primarily looking at schools. So my dad was obviously very, very involved in the process. You have to write an essay on paper, give it to him. He would proofread it. He would read the essay, give you feedback, go back and revise it. Second draft, third draft, fourth draft.
Right. Wow, that's awesome. That's so great to hear. I mean, from my own perspective as well, like I really did not, you know, I wish, you know, one of the things that I really wish that we had were like mentors that were already here, not necessarily even family. Like if we were aware of like programs or mentors that were already here that could literally guide us on maneuvering and just, you know, getting our way around once we came here, because we all came here at we were teenagers when we came to America, and we came by ourselves, you know? So it's like we had to figure a lot of things out. I feel like if we had like advisors, or maybe the schools had actually had advisors, but we just did not know about those, like to call them from Africa and really get some advice based on, you know, the options that we could potentially pursue, you know, based on, of course, our preferences, like what we were really passionate about. Because I also loved math, I still do, and physics as well. Those were like one of my favorite subjects in high school. And I mean, I knew I didn't want to be a doctor because my mom was a doctor, and I just did not, I'm a huge empath, so I knew I would be miserable as a doctor. But I mean, I felt like the only other choice I had was just to be a pharmacist that was closest to a doctor, you know? And I remember I mean, I was very clueless, by the way. I remember the day before I was leaving for America, one of my aunties, she was like, why are you trying to do pharmacy? Do you want to be like just selling in a drugstore? Because back in Africa, that's all we have. You know, like we don't really have specialties in pharmacies. Like we don't have specializations. It's just the drugstore, you know, and anybody can sell medications. Like you don't need any regulations and stuff like that, you know. So she was like, you don't want to do that. But I mean, I just had it in my heart. I'm like, okay, I know for sure I don't want to do a drugstore pharmacy, which, you know, I have nothing against that. I mean, and I've come to really have a lot of respect for retail pharmacists because the amount of work that they have to do and the stress they go through, I don't think I would have survived, you know? And I knew I wanted to do something different, but I had no clue what I wanted to do. Even right when I was in pharmacy school, I had no clue what I wanted to do. So I really wish that, you know, with all those choices and stuff like that, we had someone that was, you know, advising us, you know, on what to do. But that was such an interesting way to look at it, like based on both of y'all's story and how you even came about doing what you're doing today, you know. So thank you very much for sharing.
I would add when you talk about mentorship, one of the things that I ended up, you know, encountering in my process of application was the United States Educational Advising Center, oftentimes affiliated to the United States embassies in different countries. This was a program that I ended up coming across, and what they do is that mentorship. They help you go through your application process. They help go through, you know, your scholarship applications, and just, you know, they oftentimes we have visiting students that are schooling in the U.S. that return to the countries to share their experiences about their college experiences and whatnot.
Right.
So for anyone that's looking into coming to school in the United States, you know, I think that's certainly, you know, a good resource for them to look into, you know, contact the United States Embassy to see if they have programs like that. And I think it's probably similar for the United Kingdom as well. I think they have the British Council where they have, you know, programs like that you can tap into and you know, utilize that as a resource.
Wow. Thank you very much for sharing that. I actually did not know about that. So yeah, we will definitely have that resource. We'll definitely have that information like in the show notes and on the website. So for anyone who hopes to come to America to study, look out for that. Thank you so much, Dr. Idris. Now let's talk about that adrenaline, like going to the American Embassy. It's never fun, right? It's never fun. Like, let's talk about that experience. Like, okay, we've chosen our major. Hopefully we have made those applications. We have taken the SAT or TOEFL, and then those are the exams, you know, and then now we have to go and face reality, like in that room, you know, talking to those people, like try to sound convincing, you know. I mean, as for me, my own experience was, oh my goodness. I mean, I would not say I was nervous when I went there, but I freaked out when I went there for sure, because almost everybody ahead of me, they denied them visas. So I was like, oh my goodness, this is it, you know? And I mean, I remember after high school, a lot of my peers, they applied to universities like in other parts of Cameroon, but I just did not, you know, I mean, I was just passing, I'll call it passing time at this university in Yaoundé, you know, but I was more of having fun than even going to school, because I knew, you know, like the route was already clear. I was going to the United States, you know, but then again, that visa was like the main hurdle that I had to go through. So I want to really hear your own experiences. So Dr. Idris, you want to start?
So the visa experience was actually quite interesting for me because my first attempt at my visa application, I got denied.
Oh.
And that's what led me to discovering the Educational Advising Center in Lagos. And it was very, very, very surprising, right? And reflecting on the experience, I think I know why I got denied. So, you know, like I said, the way I found out about University of Toledo was my dad brought a catalog and said, here's a school and apply, and I got accepted. I really didn't do a whole lot of research on my own.
Right.
A lot of the things that I learned about University of Toledo was the things that I heard from my dad and what I read from the catalog. Versus the average student that is passionate about coming to school in the United States, who goes out and does a bunch of research on different schools, you know, goes through the application process themselves. They really have a good knowledge of why they want to go to the United States for school, why they chose that specific institution, and what they hope to get from the experience.
Right.
I don't think at my initial attempt at going to the embassy, I had all of those answers. So when I went to the consular officer, they could tell that my response was very rehearsed. leading up to my visa interview, I had practice sessions with my dad. Like, these are the kind of questions they're going to ask you. These are the kind of responses you should provide.
Right.
And it was very, very rehearsed. So
oh my
the
goodness.
consul officer was like, I don't trust this guy's going to go to the United States to go to school or even return, or has ties to return home.
oh my goodness.
So in the interim, I, pursued, looking at schooling opportunities in Nigeria. So I actually started studying pharmacy in University of Lagos. I was in University of Lagos for less than a whole academic year because I applied again, for my visa and got accepted. But I had to defer my application to the next application cycle at University of Toledo. And I went back and did my own research on various schools. Actually, at that time, I was going to the embassy with just a single application. When I went back and did my own research, I applied to 20 more schools. I got like a bunch of admissions. When I initially applied to Toledo, I did not have any scholarship. But when my second round of application, because I was, I had more information about the process, I actually had a ton of scholarship.
Wow.
But we chose to go to Toledo because we had that family friend, guardian in Toledo to help with the transition.
Right.
So that was my experience. It was very, very intimidating, but I learned a whole ton from the experience. And going through the Education Advising Center, you get to connect with a lot of friends who are also going through the same journey. You also maintain that relationship even while in the United States. I mean, I still have this, so a lot of them are still my very, very close friends.
Wow.
Even while you're going through school and trying to, go through the assimilation process, you reach out to them and figure out how they're doing, what kind of struggles they're facing. And you just have those individuals for you to bounce ideas off of and exchange your struggles.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's really interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that. What about you, Dr. Sheila?
Yeah. So going to the U.S. Embassy, it's never straightforward, in my opinion, because one, they're very rude. I would say, the embassy, they can be very obnoxious. Just getting in, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm a human being. Treat me with respect,
Right.
But so walking in, they make it sound like you're not welcome. And usually it's not even the Americans. It's first of all our fellow Cameroonians.
It's the Cameroonians. Yeah.
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 So you walk in already, they scare you from the get-go. And then you get into the embassy, just like you, Anyoh. Everyone, or not, I would say 90% of the people in front of me got denied the visa. And at the embassy, they can also be obnoxious when they refuse the visa.
Yeah.
They will be loud. So
they'll be so loud.
That's so loud, yeah. And so that scares you before you get to the officer, and you lose some confidence and you start stammering, even if you know the answer. So hey, I actually will come back to my country because I have valid reasons to come back. So it was nerve-wracking more because of how they receive you, as opposed to the whole, as opposed to you lying to the embassy, So I would say it was nerve-wracking. But once I started talking to them and explaining to them why I wanted to come to the U.S. and showing them that, the reasons for me to come back to Cameroon, as opposed to staying in the U.S., it went smoothly. I would say overall, But initially it was nerve-wracking.
Yeah, it was really nerve-wracking. I mean, someone like my junior brother, he went when he was still very young when he came here. So my dad actually answered for him on his behalf because he was too young. He was a minor, so they wouldn't even ask him the question. So they asked my dad, and my dad answered for him, and he was just standing there, So
I finished high school when I was 16. So in my initial round of application, I was 16 going to the embassy.
Right.
So that also played a role too, that this young guy.
You're very young, Yeah,
it was clear. It was very evident that I didn't have a clear sense of what's going to school in the United States.
Right.
And I can easily tell from the consular officer's perspective was I wasn't serious enough, or I wasn't mature enough to be able to go to school in the United States at the time. So I guess my advice to folks applying is it's not a walk in the park.
It's not.
There's a lot of preparation that goes into going to the embassy, and you have to know a lot about your major. You have to know a lot about your school. You have to know a lot about, how you're going to pay for school.
Right.
And you're going to have to demonstrate that you have strong ties to your country that will make you come back to your country.
Right.
Right. So.
Yeah. That's very important. Thank you so much for sharing that. Actually, that was the next question I was going to ask. What will you really tell?
Yeah. And one other thing I would add is, yes, you can I would say try to be as truthful as you can, because somehow they can tell, you know, when you're not 100% truthful. Of course, like, it's okay to embellish your story, but try to be as truthful as possible, because they can tell. And I think that's also one of the reasons why some people, I could hear like that the officer was doubting the answers, and that's why they said no. So as truthful as you can be.
Yeah. I mean, to me, I feel like if someone asked me like the top maybe 2 or 3 things that are very important for any international student coming, especially to the US, is number 1, like Idris said, you have to make sure that you prove to them that you have strong ties to your country and that you will return, because that's the main thing. You can have all A grades, you can have whatever, but if you don't convince them that you're going to return, you know, and you can tell them, you know, based on, you know, one good thing is like having family back home, of course, you know, so they would know that, hey, you know, this person has family back home. And then another thing too is that you have to prove to them that you're not going to be a burden to the US government. In other words, you can finance yourself. So you have to make sure that either you or your parents, you know, have a lot of assets that, you know, valid assets actually, that you can prove that, you know, they own, that they can be able to cover all your expenses throughout the years that you're going to be there. And of course, the third one is obviously know what you're going to do in the US. You just can't go to the embassy without having a clear path. Know like your immediate goals, your midterm goals, or even your long-term goals, because they could ask you, because that will determine if you're the kind of person that you want to stay in the US. Like the long-term goal, I mean, I think one of my long-term goals were like, I want to come back and really change the dynamic of pharmacy in Cameroon. Hey, but I'm still here, whatever. But, you know, things like that, you know, it's very important to make sure that, look at it as a job interview, you know, make sure that you have a clear path to your future, and you also be truthful, like what Dr. Sheila said, you know, so that's what I can add. I mean, we're going to revisit that topic eventually. Now, I mean, we already have the visas, you know, and we're happy, excited, celebratory, and then now we have to get ready to come to the United States. My own experience, I can't even remember that per se, but I really didn't know what to expect, because I had never been to the United States. I mean, I had traveled out of Cameroon for sure to other African countries, but this was the first time that I was traveling to the Western countries. So I mean, I came with my dad, but I had no idea what to expect. Like, I didn't even know what to pack. I packed just a little box. You know, I gave out a lot of my things. Like, hey, I'm traveling. You know, in my country they call it bush faller. I'm like, yeah, you know, I'm falling bush. You know, hey, I mean, I didn't really know exactly what was coming my way, but I was very hopeful and excited to start a new phase in my life. So what about you guys? What about you, Dr. Sheila?
Yeah, so coming to the US for school, I would say I had been to the US before, but that was on vacation. And in my opinion, it's a totally different experience going on vacation with your family and like leaving your home and coming to the US for school. It was hard. Like the transition coming to the US for school was hard. Before leaving Cameroon, just like you, Anyoh, my siblings accompanied me. So that was nice, you know, to have them accompany me, but they left, you know, and I had to figure life on my own, even if they were supporting me from Cameroon, but you're alone in the US and you have to figure out, yes, you know what you want to do. You want to do biology, but you have to figure out how to do it. And then studying in the US was different from studying in Cameroon, I would say. So that was also just challenging. Finding genuine friends that would not, you know, like, dissuade me from following my dream. Of course, I had the wrong friends at the beginning, and consequences to that, you know.
Right.
So even just finding the right friends, you know, like that was hard. And missing home was also very challenging, and just also like learning how to, which we'll talk about later, like there's a question about that, like networking also was like challenging. Just getting used to the whole US system was challenging. That's why even if I had been there on vacation, it was a whole different experience, and it just felt like I had never been to the US when I went to college.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. What about you, Dr. Idris?
Yeah, I think it was an intimidating experience for me to a certain degree, but like you, I think I had an open mind. I think it was intimidating because once I started to learn more about, you know, studying pharmacy in the United States, that, you know, especially with Toledo, I realized that I wasn't actually in the pharmacy program yet. You know, I was going into a pre-pharmacy program,
yeah.
and I had to do very well academically for you to get into the PharmD program.
Yeah.
And all of those, you know. So from an academic perspective, I just wasn't sure what to expect, right? And I think one thing that was a little bit intimidating for me initially was for you to get an A, you had to get 90% or
90%, yeah.
In Nigeria, it was like 80% or something
right.
like that. And to get 80% back in Nigeria was
so hard.
Very challenging.
Yeah, it was very hard.
Now I have to get a 90% or above to get an A.
Yeah.
You know how it is back home. Like, your dad wants to see those, your parents want to see those A's on your report. So from that aspect, it was quite, you know, intimidating. And then, you know, just like the both of you have shared, is just assimilating to a new culture, friends and, you know, cultural shock and all that, and making sure that you have good people around you that will continue to support you, that will continue to motivate you to do well, and you don't get lost in aura of distractions and all that. So I think those were the challenges. When I traveled, I was fortunate. My family friend who lives in Toledo, they actually were visiting around the same period, so it worked out really well. So you know, we flew to the U.S. together, landed in Detroit, and you know, drove from Detroit to Toledo. So actually, when I landed in Detroit, I don't know if you know Mel Betty.
Yeah, Mel, yeah.
I landed in Detroit. And the first person I seen as I landed was Mel.
Huh.
You know, and it was very, very interesting because, you know, I walked up and, you know, we made eye contact and I introduced myself and I said, hey, you know, I'm going to school in Toledo. I'm going to study pharmacy. And Mel at that point had just gotten accepted into the PharmD program at Toledo.
Wow.
I was like, wow. It's
mind blowing.
Yeah, I know. So, Mel was the first person from UT that I met as soon as I landed in Detroit. And, you know, obviously we connected afterwards, and it was kind of one of those initial people that I was looking forward to, you know, looking up to.
Right.
Mel was good, you know what I mean? Like, you know, he's got his ducks in a row.
Yeah.
So it was good to see someone who was going through the same journey and was excelling so well. And, you know, just having people like that to look up to was very, very soothing as well.
Wow, that was a very good story, because that was like your first networking opportunity, right as you landed. Now look at you today. It's you
can tell Mel looked at me and his expressions was probably like, you don't know what you're about to get yourself into.
Right? Right, for sure. I mean, oh my goodness, talking about experiences, I don't even know where to start, because I remember like my dad and I, we landed in Virginia. So we spent some time with my aunties in Virginia. So we had to come to Detroit, because I came to like a private school. It was this little Catholic school in Michigan. And basically, for the most part, I was usually the only Black person in my class for the most part, you know. And so for some weird reason, we got our flight ticket the day before to come from Virginia to Detroit. So for some weird reason, there was just one seat in that plane, but my dad and I had to come. So what we decided to do was we looked for two airlines, and then we booked two airlines that were going at around the same time. And we booked one seat in that airline and then one seat in the other one. So my dad and I should arrive at the same time. So now we got on the plane and landed in Detroit, and before you know it, I landed, but I could not see my dad. You know, because it was in the winter as well, you know. So around that time, I think my dad's flight was delayed because something happened. They had to even switch planes and stuff like that. But I was freaking out. I didn't have a phone. I was freezing. I didn't know where my luggages were. I didn't know, because my dad checked both luggages in his plane. So I came without a luggage. Like, I was freaking out, and I was just crying and walking around the airport, looking at boards and asking questions. And, you know, I had no idea what was going on. And then my dad landed, and then we both spent about 2 hours in the airport looking for each other until my dad had to like use a speaker. Like, he went and talked to someone at the kiosk, and they called my name, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is not what I signed up for. And I was crying. I was like, no, this is not what I signed up for. So it was, I mean, from get-go, it was such a very traumatizing experience. And, you know, going now to the first school I went to, I studied pre-pharmacy, but This is another reason why I felt like it would have been better for us to have mentors, which, Idris gave a really good idea, of that opportunity, because I felt like I took some classes that were irrelevant. I mean, first of all, I speak good English. I spoke good English too, but they put me in an English as a second language class, yes. The ESL class. And I'm like, I didn't even have to read. I was just like, killing it. Like I was having 100% and stuff like that. And I was like, this is a waste of my time, I really feel like, a lot of the things that we did, especially in the high school level back in Africa, were literally like sophomore level, in equivalent to sophomore level, which is second year in university here. So like my first 2 years were just like a piece of cake, chemistry, organic chemistry and biology, physics, all those things. So I feel like, if we could find like a way, I'm going to look into that. I don't know if any of you guys have that idea, like to look into a way, like a school that even like do good conversions that they can qualify you to have taken certain courses that you don't need to take anymore, because I felt like I really wasted a lot of my time, but then I had to move to Toledo, and then that's when like the real life started, So I don't know about the culture shock. I personally, I had a hard time with the accent, maybe for the first semester. And it was really strange because, being the only Black person in class, it was weird, and then I had to, get acclimated very, very quick on the system. The system is very quick. It's very easy, but we back home, we took exams very manually. We didn't use like the bubble sheets, the test sheets that you have to, there are a lot of things that we did back home that we did not do. That's not done here. So
essay type of.
Right.
You write down your rationale for things.
Right. You had to think more here, and you had to be more applicable and not just memorizing concepts and things like that, So I don't know if you guys can talk about your own culture shock experiences. Dr. Idris.
Culture shock. I think that food was big for me.
Yeah.
For the first, almost for an entire semester, I was going to the cafeteria and just trying to figure out what am I going to eat. Like I kept eating pizza and cereal. Lunch, and it was just like trying to figure out, food was one. The other, in terms of building relationships, I think I was very intentional about connecting with international students as much as also connecting with, the Americans, because, the international students were people that I was able to, really people that are going through the same struggle. Mm-hmm. And we could, empathize with each other. We could, share about how we were able to overcome certain struggles.
Right.
So from that perspective, it was very beneficial. So being part of the International Students Association, made a bunch of friends from that. Mm-hmm. Even before I came to the United States, I already networked with my roommate, at that time it was MySpace.
Right. I remember MySpace and High Five.
Yeah, I was already friends with my roommates on MySpace. We're already been exchanging messages. Also, I think that via your student portal, you can also see people that are in your class. So,
nice.
Sending people in my class on MySpace and Facebook, and, just anticipating that, getting on campus. Other than that, Anyoh, I think that for example, I remember my biology teacher, she spoke really fast, a Caucasian lady that spoke really fast, and it was very for me to sometimes understand her. I think at some point I had to actually start recording the lectures so I could go back and listen to the lectures afterwards. And, just understanding what's going to get tested, because initially, just like, you both alluded to, back home, it was learning the essay behind the questions. Like you go through this whole paragraphs of response to your question,
right.
The real true application of what you're learning in class. So understanding the methods of how questions are going to be asked. I initially was reading about a bunch of textbooks. I bought all the textbooks initially, spent thousands and thousands of dollars with any of them. You needed was just a handout in class and take notes and read that, and that's
right.
But literally, I had one of these bags where you roll to class, because whenever I was
you have so many books.
Yeah, whenever I left my dorm to go to class, I was essentially on campus for the whole day. It was class to class to class to class. So I had all my textbooks.
My goodness.
Yeah. So I think those are my major culture challenges where, how am I going to get tested? How am I just going to do well academically? And then socially, it was just meeting a bunch of people on campus. The International Student Association was a good opportunity. And also just like being open-minded, interacting with folks. Folks want to hear about your story.
Right.
You're going to come across ignorant people that are going to ask you questions like, how'd you get to the United States?
Right, Or do you speak English? Or where do you live? Do you guys live in tents and things like that? Ridiculous.
Like that. You're going to have these ignorant people, but those are just ignorant people. But generally speaking, people want to truly hear about your story. They find it very, very cool that you left your country to come school in the United States. They want to learn about your culture, genuinely want to learn about your culture. And people also find, a lot of international students to be very academically strong.
Yes.
Right? And perhaps it's that motivation of, if you have that pressure of you can't fail, because
you can't fail, right? The money that's been wasted.
But also I think that we also have our high education is also very strong.
Intense,
that prepares very well for us to get a good, foundational knowledge starting into college. So.
Right. That's true. Thank you so much for sharing that. While you were talking, another thing that I felt like was really very, very interesting and somewhat challenging was the fact that even though the courses that we attended were very easy to understand per se, and we could grasp the concepts, but the American system, they give you so much homework assignment. It's like, oh my goodness, they keep you busy, right? It's easy stuff, but they keep you busy. This is like, I definitely was not used to that. And I don't even think that's the African system. Like the classes are hard, the tests are hard, but they don't really give you as much as homework assignments as they give, here in America. So that's something that it took a while for me to get acclimated to, because I was like, oh my goodness, what's up with all of this work? Like it was ridiculous. They make sure that they keep you busy. So what about you? What was your own culture shock experience, Dr. Sheila?
Yeah, you both just touched on most of what I would have said. So I would just specifically academics, just as you all mentioned. I'm sure we all did great before coming to the US, but as you both mentioned, Americans focus on critical thinking over memorization.
Right.
And that was thing, I had to learn, you could memorize all you wanted and sometimes still not ace the test. That was when you got to higher level classes, if you had not thought about applying the the subject as you all had mentioned. So that was one of the things I had to learn about. Office hours, I had to learn that was key. I actually learned about, I started learning about networking because coming to the US, I didn't really know that was a thing. I was like, oh my gosh, just get your A grades and then
and go home, right?
Then you realize that, oh my gosh, I need to network. So I knew I wanted to go into med school, and organic chemistry, I found that challenging. So I was still doing well enough. So, but even with that, because I wanted a letter of recommendation from one of my professors, I still went to her office hours, even if I was acing her test. I was gotta see my face. She gotta know me, so that when I come ask her for a letter of recommendation, she would say something substantial beyond the fact that, she got an A,
Right.
So just learning about networking. And then thirdly, friends, good friends. As I mentioned before, it's easy to find the wrong friends. People think life is flashy in America, but actually if you want to excel, you need to find the real friends who would help you stay on your path, on your lane, So initially, yes, I had the wrong crowd. And once I realized that, my gosh, that's not leading me anywhere, I switched my friends. And you would realize that the good friends actually do help make or break your experience in America. You can totally miss your path if you have the wrong friends. But if you have the great ones, you can achieve your goals. And then lastly, what Idris said, you're going to hear the silly comments, which some of them I was like, my gosh, why would you guys sit down and think about that? But you have to get over it. I remember one friend coming over, or one acquaintance coming over to me and asking me to interpret Hakuna Matata to her. And I'm
oh my goodness.
I don't even know what that means. I don't understand, Another one coming, they assume that just because you came to the US, you have nothing else in your country.
Right.
With the saddest expression on her face, why are your parents still in Cameroon? Why don't they want to move to America? Isn't life better here? And I was like,
right.
Hey, but yeah.
Right. That's very true.
I just want to touch on that. Your professors knowing you. I remember, one of our mutual friends, Sheila, her name is Inky. She always makes fun of me because we're in the same chemistry class, and initially, I started off in class being in the front row because, that's a reflection of like you're early, you're serious.
Right.
And when I used to do that in our chemistry class, the Nikki used to make fun of me that, this guy's this Nigerian guy trying to.
Oh my goodness.
Over time, I started to scale back.
Right.
And then I ended up in all the way back.
That's so funny. That's so funny.
I remember vividly though, in class, they'll have you do these clicker questions.
Yes. I remember the clicker questions.
There were questions. I remember one time I went to class. Well, I got an email from the professor saying that they didn't see me in class.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I was like, I was in class. These are the questions you asked.
Right? Oh, yeah, because I remember they were using the clickers for attendance. So they're just going to ask, just a simple question, or random question, as long as you use your clicker. I remember. Oh, yeah, those are one of the things.
Clearly my clicker was acting up, so it wasn't registering my attendance.
Right.
So I got an email. I just was shocking. Like, I was like, am I in trouble? Like,
yeah.
So that's like, I responded to the email saying I was in class, this is where I sat, these are the questions you asked, that's
right.
what we touched on, blah, blah, blah. But I think it was just interested. It was
that's very true. Those are one of the things that actually were... Those are one of the challenges for me too, like those clicker things. And, it was so much that we had to catch up on, man. Like, it was crazy, man. Like, I mean, you just had to figure out a way, to succeed, I guess, but one thing that you both really mentioned was that networking. I mean, I can't stress the importance of networking. And that's something that it's not in our culture in Africa. In Africa, what matters is what's on paper, like your grades, right? You have to have 100% or whatever. You have to have your report card should not be red. It should be blue or black, So it's like, but you go to class, you just get your grades and you come back home. There are no networking organizations. There are no networking events that you go to and stuff like that. So that's one thing that, we actually had to learn here. And that has really brought us very far because you can't go to the top by yourself. Like, you need people to go to the top. So for anyone that's coming to America, make sure that networking, like, ask questions, never be shy. Ask questions. Make sure that the people that will write your recommendation letter will say good things about you. And you have to do that through networking. You have to make sure that you're acquainted to these people and make sure that you're really familiar with these people and they're familiar with you as well, So that's really a big thing. I don't know if you guys want to add anything.
So I would also say one thing that I had to learn coming here also was, like, in addition to networking, joining extracurricular activities,
right.
Like, you can study all you want. That's great. But if you want to go to, like, amazing places, you have to, like, branch out, because Americans love to see that, yes, you can study and get good grades, but also that
you have a balance.
You can add to something else in that program, or like the hospital, or I don't know, like pharmacy or something. So do join extracurricular activities, be it organizations in your college. There'll be 1,000 of them. Like, just pick your interest, join it. Be it like music, even, whatever, like something extra, so they can see that you're a well-rounded human being. And leadership opportunities.
Right.
If you can join any leadership opportunity, like, they really, really love to see those leadership opportunities, and that you can be a leader. Regardless of the culture shock that you will encounter, it's inevitable.
Yeah.
One thing I would also stress is to remain true to yourself.
Oh, yes.
That they also do appreciate, like, the real ones, is that, as Dr. Idris had mentioned, they are interested in you. Those that matter will truly be interested in you, and you do not have to be fake, for them to be truly interested in you.
Yes.
Yeah. I was just going to add that going to school in the United States or abroad in general is not just about for the academics, it's an experience. And you really should take advantage of the experience. So there's no better way for you to really have an experience other than being in a campus environment of 20, 30, 40,000 people, and really take advantage of it. So be open-minded, go to different campus activities, especially during orientation. The schools always have a bunch of different orientation activities. Take advantage of that. Build networks with people from different countries, so the international students, but also be very intentional about building relationships with the Americans as well. And really learn about the American system, learn about the system, because that's what really going to allow you to thrive, really help you understand the system is going to allow you to do well academically as well. So oftentimes you find, international students that, the Nigerians that want to, be strictly want to affiliate with the Africans, that, you're in an international community, so take advantage of the resources that are available to you.
Right.
And I totally agree with everything else that Sheila said about leadership opportunities, extracurricular activities. I think all of that just adds to the experience for you.
Right. Thank you both so much for that. This is something I wish someone told me when we came here. We actually just had to, realize that and discover that when you go to apply for a program or a job and they're like, letter of recommendation, and you're like, oh my goodness, who do I know? You start asking yourself, like, who do I know who can say something good about me, So the earlier you start making those relationships, the better, Now, still on the matter of culture shock, of course, there's always that homesickness, and you miss all the good food back home. You miss the lifestyle, the nightlife, you miss everything. And so how did you, reconnect? How did you reconnect or at least, cope with that homesickness and the culture shock and the change in environment? For me, I knew a few other Africans that were in town, but not necessarily my school. And I tried to connect with them on social media and stuff like that. Every now and then, some of my older friends who have been here for a while, they can invite me or pick me up because I didn't have a car. They pick me up from school. I was in the dormitory, pick me up and I eat some Cameroonian food every now and then, or at least I try to. We didn't really have like an African organization, I believe. It's the African Student Association. Yeah, we didn't have that it wasn't really because, like I said, actually a lot of the international students that were in my school at that time were from South Korea. It could be maybe just 10 of us or even less that were from, Africa. So it was it was an interesting school, honestly. But, it was hard. So actually I had a lot of friends who were in they were in other public universities that had a bigger population size and a bigger African population size, that they had their African student associations. And I was always, going there and trying to network with those Africans and just keep in touch with my roots. Because especially being in a community like that where, not many people came from where I came from, it's very easy to lose touch of your values, your background, your tradition, So it's something that I felt in order for me to maintain that, to really reconnect with those people as well as I also do, the Westerners or the Americans or people from different countries. So I'll start with you, Dr. Sheila. How did you cope with all of that?
Being homesick. Yeah, I was very homesick when I just moved to the US. And I'm just gonna be honest, I cried a lot at the beginning. I did a fair amount of time. I cried, and that helped me because initially when I was younger, crying would help me feel better.
Right.
So I did that, but also I had two siblings in the US. I had Christelle, my older sister. She was in Buffalo, New York. I had my older brother Marco. He was in Michigan. So when I had vacations, I would go see them. I was in North Carolina when I moved to the US. So I was in Chapel Hill specifically. There wasn't a huge Cameroonian or African community. So in terms of getting Cameroonian food or African food, that wasn't really a thing for me, Mm-hmm. I had met this Cameroonian family when I just moved, but they lived so far. So I would see them once or twice a semester. So of course, within North Carolina, I would say I didn't have a strong community, and that was tough. My family was my strongest community. I would fly to them or speak to my parents or my close friends all the time and get to see this family that I could see, which I'm still in touch with them. I love them twice a semester or so. But there is this one person that I hope I don't cry when I talk about him that actually touched my heart when I was in college. So he's a cab driver, actually. When I moved to the US, when my parents accompanied me, they used that cab driver while they were here, but then they left, of course, And this cab driver, he was Nigerian. He was a lot older than me. So I think he took me like his daughter. Aww. He would cook for me. He would cook plantains and just Nigerian food and bring it to my dorm as often as he could. Aww. And so that was very sweet of him. So
I know.
He wasn't a family member, but to this day, that cab driver, I count him as someone who I would never forget because whenever he could, he would bring stuff to me,
Right.
And so still now, it's many years since I left undergrad, but I'm still in touch with him because he did leave a positive impression on me.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing that heartfelt story. I mean, for those who have never really been in our shoes, just those little acts of kindness go a very long way, man. Like, they go a very long way, because international students, for the most part, are usually always broke and miserable, you know? So just even a little bit of a lunch, or, you know, just some, even if it's fast food, or even if, I mean, I remember like friends of mine that just one trip that they came and took me from the dormitory, just leaving the premises of the dormitory, it was like, oh my goodness, I'm free. Like, you know, it meant so much to me, you know? So, I mean, I really want to thank you for sharing that. And I also want to, hopefully that story encourages other people to do same for those who are, you know, in need, you know?
And it's beyond the money, I would say. It's even not about the money, because I remember that guy, like, I'll be like, I will pay you for these services. He's like, no, I don't want money, you know? And he would drive me around, and he was older, you know, like, for free. I'm like,
oh my goodness, girl, you were like, you were living.
You. And he was like, no, so you're like, I'm not even you're refusing for me to pay you for everything you're doing. And you're a lot older, you know, and it's not like he was hitting on you on anything.
Yeah.
He
just wanted
like,
to help.
Out of his good heart, you know, so.
Wow, that's nice.
Like that I can say. I have not met anyone else like that old guy.
Right? Those are hard to find, believe me. What about you, Dr. Idris?
I would say I was very fortunate. You know, like I said, I had a family friend that lived in Toledo, and you know, my guardian, and anytime I was homesick, I went to their house and eat, you know, pounded yam.
Oh my goodness, lucky you.
You know, they had, you know, young men who, you know, they're my brothers, and, you know, would hang out, would go out, and, you know, when initially, just like you, my parents made me come here with like literally nothing in terms of clothing. So, you know, come in and, you know, help me like figuring out things to buy, good deals and whatnot. But aside from that, though, I think that, you know, it's important for people to understand that they can have different cycles of friends. So when I was on campus, I tried to make it an effort to know every African that I possibly could know.
Yeah.
And, you know, it all came from me hearing about somebody that's, you know, African, and I'll figure out who they are and get to know them. And then from that person, know if there's another African that they know and they know. So I really, you know, for my first semester, I really got to try to know as many Africans as possible. Mm-hmm. Through the course of all of that, I actually found that there was, you know, one of my friends who I was in school with in Lagos, her sister was also in school at Toledo.
Oh, nice.
Her sister was a master's in public health major in Toledo. And she also had a circle of a lot of friends. I mean, the same circle, I know, you know Elsie, right? Elsie, Morayo, and all these.
Yeah.
So they're essentially like, you know, anytime they had any Nigerian activity going on campus, they would invite me, and, you know, but the struggle was I didn't have a phone. I didn't have a cell phone.
Yeah.
For anyone to get a hold of me, or either send me a Facebook message. So I have to, you know, once in a while log into Facebook, like, who's trying to get a hold of me, or call my dumb phone, which I was never.
You're never in the dumb.
It was very, very hard for anyone to get a hold of me.
Right.
But certainly, like, just like I said, it's okay for you to have different circles of friends. You can have your African friends for you to, you know, feel homey. If you feel like you're homesick, you can, you know, hang out with them. You know, obviously, a bunch of my, you know, African friends want to go play soccer. We'll play soccer with them. We'll argue about football. We'll watch football together. I mean, you know, but, you know, I also had, you know, friends that were in my major. If I wanted to go study, I will study with them. Yeah. Like different cycles of friends, and, you know, and
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Actually, that's very interesting, because when you mentioned about the phone, you know, it reminded me about the struggles that we went through to keep in touch with our family back home. I mean, right now you have WhatsApp, you have everything. Back then, you had the calling cards. Like, first of all, you need to get a ride, to go to the store, to get a calling card. And not all calling cards were used to call Africa. Like, there were no online, there were no apps or anything of that sort. Like, you had to struggle and get a calling card, and then you get a calling card for your little $5, and you talk for like 2.5 minutes, and it's done. You're like, like, what is going on? You know, I mean,
like I was the only one who was buying the calling cards at the gas station where I used to
I
buy
know.
them. You know, like I was the only person who was buying it. And then you call and the network is bad, and then you like,
I know.
phone drops, and then you call back and the entire $5 is gone.
Right.
Like,
I know. You're like, where did that money go to? You know, like you're literally trying to manage the small money you have. I mean, it was so, oh my God, it was so miserable. At least thank God my parents really put in an effort to call like every weekend, because of course they didn't know our schedule during the week. So every weekend, at least I tried to call them and stuff like that. But of course, when they saw my call, they know I'm asking for something, you know, it's like, I need something, you know, but man, it was a struggle. I mean, times have changed, man. Like, I mean, when I said experience is different, it's totally different. Times have definitely changed.
It's better nowadays, yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about the moolah expenses. Oh my goodness. Okay. I mean, international studies definitely are not cheap. And most of us are fortunate to have made it, honestly. I mean, it's just by the grace of God, you know, and provision, you know, but not everyone can really say the same. You know, in my own experience, there was actually always this looming sense of guilt over my head, like, and that pressure that I always felt like I have to succeed. I have to succeed. Like, I mean, I started in a private school. That was mad expensive. Like my peers who were in public schools were paying like half the tuition I was paying. And that private school, they didn't offer any scholarships for international students, nothing. So I always had that immense pressure of like, I have to, even if this is not what I want to do, I just have to make sure that at least I give my parents that degree that they sent me here for. That's the least I could do, you know? So it was really very challenging. And with all the pressure and trying to adjust to the new environment and the culture shock and everything, you still had that guilt and that pressure that you had to do well, you know? So, I mean, I even had to, my first semester, thankfully, my dad had a friend in that school who was a teacher. He was actually a chemistry teacher, and he gave me a job to work as a lab assistant in the chemistry lab. And at least I was making a little bit of, you know, money here and there. And I was also mentoring other students at a certain department in that school. So that's how I was actually making some money. But you know, there's that hurdle with international students here in America where you cannot work out of campus. The only way that you can work is on campus. And imagine if there's like at least 100 international students on campus, like, is that one job that 100 people are probably trying to fight for, you know? Because coming here, they assume that you're coming here strictly for studies. You have to be a full-time student, and you're not supposed to work out of campus because you didn't come to this country to work. You don't have a H-1B visa. You have a F-1 visa, which is for studies. So it was very, very hard to even try to relieve that stress off of my parents, because there was not much I could do to help, you know. So the least I could do was just to make sure that I don't mess up in school, right? So I don't know, how was it for you both? Like, you know, how did you manage those expenses and make ends meet? So Mr. Idris, Dr. Idris, sorry.
It's thank God for our parents and a family. I mean, that's really it. I mean, we're extremely, I always, you know, have this conversation with my wife and, you know, friends, and not having any financial debt from education,
student loans,
it really sets you up really nicely for the rest of your life in this country. So it's just like a lot of gratitude to our family for this support. Just like you, it's a lot of guilt. You know, it's like, you know, yes, come from, I would say, fortunate, but still in being fortunate, it's never easy, right? Especially when you have, you know, a bunch of siblings are also going to school overseas. And when you also come from a country that has a very unstable economy where the naira to dollar rate just fluctuates so drastically. I think when I was starting school, I think the exchange rate was like 100 naira to a dollar, or something like that, 120 to a dollar. When I finished, it was getting close to 300. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Like, so it just like all of those things play a huge factor into where your money is coming from. And yes, it was guilt, it was a lot of pressure, it was the pressure from the academic perspective, the pressure of, you know, what can I do to make this better, to relieve some of this financial burden from family. But my family they never complain, right? They always tell you that whatever you need, call, we'll provide and whatnot. And it's not really that, but it's just you just putting that additional pressure on yourself. But, you know, as soon as I could try to get a job, my first job was my first semester in college. I was an international student orientation ambassador
Nice, yeah.
I signed up for it because I actually didn't know I was going to get paid for it. And I got paid for it. I think that's how I got my first mobile phone. I used that money to get my first mobile phone. I was able to, at least set up for like a plan for a mobile phone. And then after that, I became a resident advisor. At least that took away the cost of living from my tuition. Dorms. And continue to look into, scholarship opportunities. I found it like quite, it didn't sit well with me that I didn't have any scholarship.
Right.
When I knew that, some of the other schools that I'd applied to, I received scholarship, which made me feel like there was something that I didn't do well in my Toledo application. Mm-hmm. Because again, I wasn't well informed when I was completing the application. So I continued to talk to the Office of International Students to see if, I could get some of that international scholarship that will waive my out-of-state tuition.
Out-of-state tuition, yeah.
Fortunately, I pushed and finally got it. So that was another huge financial relief. So,
right.
Just continue to find ways that I can, at least if it's the cost of living, pocket money doesn't have to come from home. All home has to worry about was just the tuition. The tuition was still a lot of money, but I felt decent enough that I was contributing in some sense to relieve that burden. But it is a lot of pressure. It's expensive.
Yeah.
It's not easy to pay $30, $35, $40 or more $1,000 yearly out of pocket. I mean, it's no joke. And I think what we also don't talk about is that's just the cost of tuition. So if you're paying living expenses, that's an additional cost. If you're paying, your parents are going to come visit you, that's an additional cost.
Yeah, if you had to get a car.
Yeah, got to get a car. All those different other things just adds up. So
yeah, that's very true. I mean, I remember because when I came to America and I went to the first school, I actually spent 2 years there, and then I moved to Toledo. That's when I met Idris, So I remember moving to Toledo, I was like, oh my goodness. I mean, the tuition was literally like 50% of what I was paying before. But I was like, man, this is a public school. Like I need some kind of scholarship or something, like there's no way. I mean, I know the private school, they have their ways and stuff, but there's no way I couldn't get like, some kind of thing. So I also looked into that out-of-state tuition that was waived, and that really helped. It brought my tuition even lower. That was such a great help that the school offered, and I think I was also one of the international student ambassadors. I remember we were picking up the students from the airport. We were driving like the big vans. I could barely, I mean, back then it's like I just learned how to, I'd been driving for like a year, and we had to drive like big vans, and we waited like in front of the airport with a sign, and then the international students came, and then we received them, and then we had to drop them in the dorms and stuff like that. So that was very interesting, honestly. It really was. But those are the little things we did. Huh?
Yeah. It wasn't just from a job's perspective. When I signed up to be an international students orientation ambassador, I wasn't expecting to get paid for it because that was my way of giving back. Giving back, yeah. I was pleasantly surprised I was getting paid for it. Obviously, I wouldn't say no to that check. Right. It felt like it was something I was passionate about, and it felt good to be getting paid for something that you were genuinely doing. I understand the struggles, but also I wanted to be a resource to Africans that were coming to Toledo as well. That's how I met a lot of Africans that came after me. Yeah. I just want them to know that they have a resource. I think it was when you started at Toledo, it was when we decided to start the African Student Association. Yeah, the association, We had an organization on campus, just letting people know that there's a community here. But it's also good to have, you study medicine, okay, I have somebody that's from your country that's in the medical school. In medical school, There's someone from your country that's in engineering school. Yeah. Connect with this person. You guys can relate on a very, very familiar basis. Yeah, that's very, very true. That's very, very true. And it all boils down as well to networking because, like I said, you can't go forward by yourself. Like you have to always go forward as a group with your tribe, There's always someone who knows someone that could be of resource to you. So that's very important. So what about you, Dr. Sheila?
Yeah, so just like both of you said, I thank God for our parents, who did help a lot financially. They covered for everything. And I know it's a blessing, which we would never take for granted. Undergrad, I didn't work. I didn't get a job in undergrad. But what I did, because I knew it was challenging to get a job, what I mostly did, and I'm really grateful because I think it helped me to this day. I did a lot of extracurricular. I mean, I studied really hard, but the extra time I had, which if I had to work, that time would have gone into work. I did like some leadership experience, and which made me know people, helped me network, like with the medical school. I joined like the Minority Association of like physicians, and which made me start connecting with like medical students. At that time, I was an undergrad, but I started going to conferences for like current medical students. I started meeting with deans of admission while I was in undergrad. So that helped me a lot. And I remember during my junior year of college, I had this organic chemistry teacher who walked up to me. She was like, "Hey, Sheila, I want you to do research with me," because thank God I was doing well in her class. So she was going to pay me. And I was so happy about that, excited to get my first job. And then maybe a week before we start the job, she walks up to me. She's like, "Hey, this is an NIH grant." Like, I can hear an accent. Where are you from? Like, are you a US citizen? And I'm like, "No, I'm an international student." And she's like, "Unfortunately, this grant cannot pay anyone on a visa." I was excited to get my first paycheck. I was like, my gosh, I'm going to start getting real money, but I could not get paid. So I spoke with my parents and I was like, "Hey, this is this opportunity. I won't be able to work. I won't be able to do it because I need to get paid." And again, thank God for our parents. They were like, "It's okay to do it for free, And so I went and met this lady. Of course, I was like, "Yeah, I'm working for free, but what's in there for me?" I was like, "This is organic chemistry. I can get a letter of recommendation from this lady, Am I going to pass up this opportunity because I'm not going to get paid? Or am I going to seize this opportunity, work for free, but get a letter of recommendation in return?" So fortunately, I worked. I didn't get paid, but I worked. And later on, she wrote my letter of recommendation for grad school when I got my master's in public health. But even like 2 years later, when I came back, I was like, "Hey, can you write another letter of recommendation for med school?" And this lady, at that time, she was the chair of the Department of Organic Chemistry. And by the time I was applying for med school, she had moved to Duke University, and she was actually like a dean of like the sciences or whatever. So even if I didn't get paid, that experience was worth more than the money I would have received at that time.
Right.
But when I went to grad school, I did get a job, and that was to like read research articles and like synthesize it. So at that point, I could get a job that I could actually get paid for.
Wow.
And then, as we all mentioned that our parents help us, but even if your parents cannot like pay the really expensive tuition, because we all recognize that it's really expensive. There are so many scholarship opportunities, as Dr. Idris mentioned, and as both Dr. Fombad and Dr. Idris mentioned, there are opportunities to work on campus. Like they both had great jobs on campus, and you can still make ends meet. It's gonna be tough, but there are jobs available on campus.
Yeah, and also I want to add to that, like, the jobs will not meet you. You have to go out and ask, right? Even when if you are doing good in a subject, and the teacher, try to be friends with that teacher and ask them, like, is there anything I can do to help? Right? All about networking, like you said. Yeah, because sometimes there are opportunities that are just sitting there, but we don't have that. It's not in our culture to go after it. Right?
Go ask. It's okay to ask. Even if you feel like, my gosh, why would I be asking? Go ask. Like there is that budget somewhere that's going to pay you. You know? And I didn't know that initially.
Right. Do you want to add something, Idris?
No, I was just going to really emphasize what Sheila has said about networking. I can't imagine being where I am today without network. It's extremely, extremely crucial. So certainly, yes, take advantage of all of those networking opportunities on campus, and specifically when it comes to your field, be very, very, very intentional about networking with people within your field. Right. And outside of campus as well, like Sheila said, going to conferences. I know it can get very expensive, but, by being part of organizations within your campus, can provide some level of funding for you to go to conference.
Yes.
I mean, Dr. Fombad was vice president or president of SNAPA back in the day.
Oh my goodness! Don't bring back those memories.
She certainly knows like there's funding to help support students to go to some of these conferences. So that's something that I also spend a lot of my time doing on campus was networking. I felt like wherever there was an opportunity for me to be a part of an organization, I felt like it was something that I believed in, it had a purpose that aligned with what I believed in, I would go to the meetings and see what they're all about and be part of it. And especially when I got into pharmacy school, I was very, very involved in various pharmacy organizations, and it's really helped me out throughout my career.
Wow. Yeah, that's nice. I mean, talking about that, like I can really attest to that, Dr. Idris, because I've always known you to be that one person, who was always very active, especially in the things that you were passionate about. Like even to today, if I have any issue, professional issue or something like that, or I need to talk to someone that knows someone, Idris is literally like number one person to go to. Like Idris always knows someone who knows someone that knows someone, And I mean, this is not the first time that you didn't start this today. Like for as long as I've known you, it's like it's always been, you've always been participating and you've always been a leader in most of these organizations. And, that brings me to my next, not question, but just next topic that I really wanted to talk about, because there's really I would say a virus between us in our African community that we're so stuck up and used to how things have been back home that when we see other people that are trying to not follow the status quo, people that are trying to take their own path and start something, it's like we don't seem to accept that like often, And what I mean is, as international students, we have this, we kind of knew what we wanted to do, right? But then, you had other professions that were easier per se, so now you have even our own people, you have all these voices in your head and in your ears, like, oh, take a quicker route. Like, why are you stressing your parents out? Why are you going to all these organizations? Why are you trying to not be one of us? Like, why are you trying to only be like them? And them mean like, the other cultures and stuff, or the other, like just the other people who are not Africans, I know pharmacy is shorter than medicine, like the whole pharmacy learning experience. Because, pharmacy and medicine is 4 years, but then medicine with the residency and everything, it ends up being almost 10 years. But, pharmacy at the most will be like 6 years, right? With 2 year of residency. But it's just like, oh yeah. And then now you come to nursing. Nursing, I don't even know how many years that is total, because I don't think they do residency and stuff. Maybe it's like 4, like for the RN and then the BSN, But it's like, oh, why don't you do nursing? Why do you have to go through all that stress and do pharmacy? Or why don't you just do this? Why don't you just do that? So it's like you have all those people that are even older than you, people that you probably used to look up to, and then they come and confuse you on, they kind of shake your foundation on why you even came to America. Like that story you were telling people in the embassy, it's like you're trying so hard to follow through with that story, but you have all of these distractions in your ear, and they come from the people that you love and you look up to, and it's very easy for you to take that easy route, right? And just take the quick money. Stop putting your parents through, especially when you're under that pressure and you see how much your parents are suffering. It's like you always want to complete it and complete school faster and help them back, but, you tend to see that your own people will look at you weird or funny because you are being overly ambitious in their language. You know what I mean? And I feel like it's something that we have to be very, very cautious about, especially in our African community. And I don't know if you guys have any kind of words of advice or even share your experiences on things like that, because I have had people tell me, oh, I should have done nursing. Or, I feel like the only reason why I was literally still on my pharmacy journey was because my dad especially was very adamant about me not doing anything else that was a shortcut. Like, he was like, if you came to do pharmacy, do pharmacy. Or there was a time I even wanted to do medicine too, because I was also taking classes for pre-med. But like with the struggles of getting into med school as an international student, that's a story for another day that we will revisit. But that's the only thing that hindered me. But I knew that it was pharmacy or nothing. So I don't know if you guys had that kind of experience or what you can say about that.
Yeah, so it's very challenging. Like, it's challenging when you come here, and as Anyoh, you mentioned, Dr. Fombad, you mentioned, like, it's a long route to end up doing pharmacy or medical school. I always wanted to be a doctor from the age of 7, so very, very few things only failure, I believe, could actually dissuade me from like continuing on that trajectory. So when I came to the US, I was so determined to, still continue on that medical school route. Of course, there were challenges. At some point in undergrad, I think my second year, I keep on mentioning, like, I was in the wrong crowd. So that really affected my grades. And that was the first time where I doubted my ability to get into med school. First of all, period, just get into med school. But again, I'm like, I am an international student. Like, I just need to forget about this thing,
Yeah.
And then I just like got back up, like we learn about resilience, like real quick, because you're like, hey, I came to do this. This is what I want to do. And I always ask myself, and to this day, like, if you had to do this all over again, like, that's a question I started asking myself. I think once I had that roadblock in undergrad, I started reading all these personal development type of books at that point, because I was like, my gosh, I'm reconsidering my life and all of that.
Right.
And so from that point, I always asked myself, and that kept me going, like, if you had to do this all over again, what would you do? And the answer was always medicine, because I kept on saying, hey, I'm so passionate about that. I felt like from my young age, that was my purpose in life, to do medicine.
Yeah.
So I would say that kept me going more than anything else, even when I encountered challenges, roadblocks. I read this book by Ben Carson. I forget the title. So I actually read a lot of his books at that time where I had stumbled, and I was like, my gosh, this guy also stumbled at some point in his life. That was before like he got into politics. That's crazy story. But at that point I read his books and I was like, he was such an inspiration at that point before politics happened.
Right.
And when I would want to give up, I would think about his story, and that would keep me going, because I'm like, I want to do this medicine thing. It's true that it's challenging. It's true that they tell me that international students don't get into med school, but all I can do is to give my best. And as long as those who are supporting me, because my goal to be a doctor was my biggest motivator. And my parents, my family also, they were so supportive, and all of us are so blessed that, our parents were like, whatever you want to do, like, as long as you do your part, we will do the rest, and thank God they stayed true to their word till the very end.
Right.
And so that kept me going. Of course, I had people tell me, that's too long. Like, especially when I got my master's from Hopkins, they were like, oh, but you got a master's at Hopkins. Why do you want to go to med school? I'm like, well, because I want to do med school, and that's my dream. I want to do it. So, and my parents were very supportive. But funny enough, even those you would hear like funny feedback from would be partners, from romantic relationships, I remember one of my partners at some point who was like, my biggest flaw was that I was ambitious. It wasn't even family, it was just like partners. Of course, that you quickly end that relationship because you're like, hey,
right? Like we don't vibe the same way.
You're like, well, I can't really be with a doctor. I'm like, all right, great, then I can be with you too,
Right.
So all of that to say, I had to stay true to myself. I've said that so many times. That was my goal. That was my dream. And I had to stay true to that. And thank God, those who supported me were willing to walk the walk with me.
Awesome. Thank you very much. What about you, Dr. Idris?
I feel like I have very little else to add to that. I think that the journey in healthcare is not easy. And it's certainly not easy. Being an international student makes it a whole lot more difficult. And I think we've touched on this a lot throughout the entire course of this conversation. Obviously, having a good support system is important. Surrounding yourself with people that are very, like you in terms of motivation, that will keep you going. But also just having a good head on your shoulder is also extremely important. A lot of times there are people that are going to doubt you. They'll doubt your abilities. It's important that you just continue to stay focused, stay true to your path, and continue to try to push yourself. It's not easy. There's going to be a lot of distractions, and it's important to also note that everyone's story is different. When in pharmacy school, there are people who may have been interested in pursuing residency after pharmacy school, but their financial situation would not allow them to do it.
That's true.
Just get a job, and so they can start to provide for their families. So. Everyone's story is also quite different. But for those who they don't have any other constraints of pursuing their goals, other than people that are doubting them, people that are, trying to distract them, I would say just stay true to your goal. Like Sheila said, be very resilient in your goals and continue to push forward. There's always going to be bumps along the road, but as long as you know why you want to do what you want to do and continue to push forward. I think there's always, the outcome is always going to be good.
Right. I totally agree. And I just wanted to add to that too, because even the people who, most of these people who are part of your tribe or part of your circle, they have the best interest. No one is going to give you advice because they want you to fail per se. You know what I mean? But it's like, if you want to advise someone about, what they should do or what they shouldn't do, first of all, let that person come to you to ask advice, like don't just enforce things,
Our African families.
Right, and we have this way, right, and we have this way of communicating with one another that I've mentioned that a lot in a lot of episodes before. We have a very insensitive way. We don't show empathy when communicating with people, especially people that are younger than us. It's like an order. You don't really try to get into this person's word and see where they're coming from, if I want to do whatever course, and I'm not even against any of these professions. Like, I believe everyone is doing something because they want to do it, and this an ultimate goal that has motivated them to pursue that, so just even recognizing that and respecting that before you try to give your own input makes a huge difference. Because you succeeded as a doctor or pharmacist or nurse or engineer does not mean everybody can, right. So we have to be more sensitive when trying to, advise one another or advise people who are looking up to us too, because, when you give those kind of advices, like a insensitive way, in an insensitive way of speaking as well, like it also messes with them emotionally, and even like it gets them confused, because it's like, I look up to this person. If they're telling me this, especially people who have been here longer than the international student, because I will look up to you because I feel like you have more experience with the American system, you can better advise me. But if you're advising me not based on where I'm coming from, but based on where only you are coming from, and also based on your own experience and excluding my own experience, then it doesn't really help the situation, So at the end of the day, being true to yourself is extremely, very, very important, like Dr. Sheila said as well.
I was just going to add that it's important that you are careful about who you're seeking advice from.
Right.
Getting advice from people who haven't been in your shoes or who haven't been in your journey can be extremely misleading.
Dangerous, yeah.
For example, when I decided to pursue residency, I knew it was going to be something that was, because my family was looking forward to me being done with school. They were also
they were like, when is that money coming in?
Studying that I'd done.
There's a countdown at some
financial perspective, but they're also feeling bad for me of how much studying I had done. Right?
Yeah.
But I knew that my decision to pursue residency, all I was seeking from my family was just support. Right? Is that this is what I want to do. I just need you to support me. I wasn't going to get advice from my family because no one is really in healthcare in my family.
Right.
So, expecting to get advice from my family members was going to be, it wasn't going to be fair to them that they want to be the ones to mentor me through this journey.
Sure.
Right? So you have to look outside of family for you to get people to advise you on how to navigate this whole journey of, pursuing postgraduate training. Even in finding mentors, you may find mentors that will doubt you and say, you may not make it, or you don't have the credentials to make it, right? So, again, it's just staying true to yourself and knowing your abilities and knowing that, yes, along the road, you may encounter some failures, but again, you bounce back,
right.
Back and keep pushing. And I think all of us, we have all our individual stories where we failed.
Yes.
You have to, dust the failure off.
Right.
Resilience, y'all.
Right.
When you talk about folks that are older in the community, I think it's also important that they don't recognize that things have changed.
Yep, that's true.
The landscape of navigating journey, even in the United States, has changed.
Yeah.
Oftentimes I look back and I say, if I were to do things over, would I pursue the same career path? Certainly, yes. But in pursuing the same career path, I will also be open-minded to exploring different options. Acquiring additional skills in addition to having a professional career.
Yeah.
If it's photography, if it's how to prepare, if it's how to fix things, skill sets that come in very handy that you can have, additional source of income or additional source of, doing other things. So
Yeah. Thank you so much. Oh my goodness. You just made a very good point in terms of skill sets, because one of my greatest sources of income when I was an undergrad was doing people's hair. I was braiding hair. And I remember, you know, growing up, my parents made sure that, I mean, we did well in school. So my parents never sent us to holiday classes because it was a waste of their money. And we didn't need to go to additional classes during the holidays. But what they did, they made sure for us to do was each holiday, we had to learn a skill. Right from, I remember when I was still in primary school, I wasn't even 10 years old, when computers was still like being introduced, they signed us up for computer classes. And then like the next year we went for like, my sister and I went to learn how to sew. My brother went to learn how to shave hair. You know, the next year we did tennis. The next year and consecutive years we did like music. And then right before I was coming to the US, they sent me to go and learn how to braid hair. And back then, you know, we look down on the hair braiders, right? You see like hair braiders are people who are not educated and stuff like that. Like they just left primary school or they didn't have degrees and they just went to go and do hair. That's how we looked at it back then, which was very ignorant, by the way. But you know, I felt embarrassed to be doing hair because I didn't want people to be like, man, this girl just had like all 5 papers in A level and she's like doing hair, you know? But that really helped me. That tremendously helped me when I was in college because I always did people's hair and they would pay me $100. They'll pay me $80. Like I had my customers, you know, just having that additional source of income, man, like it meant everything. And if I didn't have those skills, I definitely would not have, I don't know how I would have been able to get that extra money. So it's very important to also learn a lot of extracurricular skills before coming to, you know, to the university. And even while doing that, you know, even along the way, you know, as Dr. Idris said, you know, learning life skills, learning other skills, like, yeah, you're doing pharmacy, but you may find yourself in a situation where you can benefit from an IT course or IT project and stuff like that, you know. So all those things really add up. It's not only about going to school and coming back home, like there other factors play towards your success. And now talking about success, I mean, 3 of us are obviously, I would call us successful because we made it. Yay. We made it through the adversity and through those times, you know.
Hey, you made it.
Oh, no, I didn't make it yet. Well, hey, at least we're better off than, you know, we're better off than where we started, right? So basically, I mean, of course, we have grown and we have learned to be independent and all of those things. And it's been such a journey, you know. So, you know, overall, what did being an international student really teach you about survival and independence? So, Dr. Idris, I'll let you go first.
I think that it's really pushed me beyond my own limits. I think being an international student has really allowed me to mature quicker.
Yeah.
You know, I've had to put myself in very uncomfortable situations and not knowing what to expect, what the outcome is going to be, but just trusting, having faith and you know, trusting that whatever it is, there's something in it for me to learn.
Right.
You know, one thing I was going to add to the conversation we just having was on a podcast a while back, and if one of a pharmacist actually used this analogy of a mentor versus a sponsor, and I think that's important for you to have both, right? You have someone that you can on a frequent basis you receive that mentorship from, but you also have someone like Sheila mentioned, that organic chemistry teacher who now seems to be a sponsor for her, who's willing to make a phone call and say, I know Sheila, she's an excellent person, like she'll be an asset to your program.
Right.
You know, someone that's willing to do something that you never thought someone would be able to do that for you.
Right.
And I've always had those individuals in my career, and I think it's extremely essential for you to have that. More importantly, for you to have that as an international student, because you have more hurdles that you may have to overcome. So having people that are in places that will speak for you behind closed doors, that will advocate for you behind closed doors. Yeah, so maturity has allowed me to mature, you know, faster. I've also benefited immensely from all the people that I've met, you know, we talked about networking. You know, I feel like I have really enjoyed learning from different people's experiences, and it also helped shape me as an individual, shape my character and the way I approach things in life, and just having a very positive outlook on things and knowing that failure is just part of the journey.
Right.
You know, as long as you have that perspective of, especially when in a difficult, challenging discipline like we are, it's very, very it's something you got to get used to. Right?
Yeah.
You got to be open to failing and learning from that experience.
Right.
Learn using that to skill set that you learn from the experience to get better in the future. Right.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, talking about failure, I feel like that's one inevitable thing that is very important and necessary for growth. Like we have at least one story in our life, especially as international student, that we failed at some point or in something. And I just want to use this opportunity to give a huge shout out to our support systems, like our parents, especially our families, because man, I can't count how many times I almost gave up, how many times that when I failed, I was so discouraged. But my parents, my mom, man, like my dad, like they kept gaslighting, like they kept pushing me forward. Like I would literally be hanging off of a string and they would literally put their hands below to support me, whether financially, with advice. They'll call me every day, make sure that I'm good and make sure that at least I have my mental health is okay. I mean, a lot of things could be really overwhelming, especially when you're in a system that does not really support international students like that. It's like you have to fight back against the system. So it's very important. I mean, some people, their support system is not their family or it's not their parents, but it's very important to also have that support system where you can always fall back on if all else fails. So yeah, what about you, Dr. Sheila?
Yeah, you both touched on, almost everything I would have said. Just like all of you mentioned, like one of the biggest things I learned moving to the US was resilience. Actually, at the end of medical school, I thought about one word that would describe all of my experiences, and resilience was that word I came up with. Because as you all mentioned, like, we failed. I failed, like I encountered like stumbling blocks.
I failed too.
That made me stronger. And it just makes me think back about the Cameroonian system where I thought that failure is the end of the world,
Yeah.
But actually that's not true. It's okay to fail. The number of people I've met, like the number of successful people I've met who have failed, guys, it's unbelievable. So it's totally okay to fail. All you need to do, the biggest failure is not getting back up. Mm-hmm. But if you can get back up and keep on going, that's like success, So totally resilience would be the first thing. Mm-hmm. And then independent would be the second thing. My first semester I mentioned to you, actually I was tearing up at some point. It was tough, Mm-hmm. But by the second semester, let me tell you guys, I was already a babe in my I just knew my way around,
Right?
I was such an independent person. I knew my way around. Like my parents would talk to me and they were like, oh my gosh, like you've grown so much, because you have to grow up. You cannot be a crybaby. You have to keep moving.
Yeah.
And so it taught me how to do things on my own. I knew that for some things I couldn't do on my own, I needed my parents, but wherever I could do things myself, I tried to learn those skills just so I could do it myself.
Right.
And then the other thing I would say, which we've all talked about, so I'm not going to elaborate on that, would be, networking. In Cameroon, people talk about networking, but in a negative way, because I've heard about networking in Cameroon in a negative way. But let me tell you, as we all have said, it happens in the world, like to get to the next step, you got to network.
Right.
I'm just going to leave it at that.
Right. Thank you so much.
The last thing I was going to add is I appreciate the people that are in your corner along the way. So we talked about support, but, just reflecting on people that gave me countless rides,
Yeah.
Oh, yes, man, those rides.
Bless your heart. I still call him. In fact, his daughter wants to get into med school. She should.
Right.
People that we extend invitation to come. Hey, come to our family house for Thanksgiving.
Oh, my goodness. Yes.
Glad that you're staying on campus by yourself for the holiday. So just really appreciate all those people that in your support system. And it's not always just family, but along the journey, you're going to find genuine people that are going to be in your corner that will continue to push you forward. So
that's very true. Thank you guys so much. Now, what do you really think is important for future international students to know before they travel to the US? If you had to say maybe one or two things, like what will you say? So let's start with you, Dr. Sheila.
A couple of things. Life is not flashy in the US,
I know a lot
of my friends, you watch all those movies, you see Kim Kardashian, you see all those people, they live the flashy life. But one thing you don't see is that all of these people, they work unbelievably hard. You see Beyonce, you love her craft, but she works 15 hours a day, like whether it's working out, whether it's doing whatever, to be that successful. So no, don't get fooled by what you see on TV. That's not how it is. Like you have to be ready to work really, really, really hard. Mm-hmm. You have to be ready to fail and get back up. You have to be humble.
Yeah.
Because teach you.
Well, life will humble you for sure.
Oh my gosh, it's gonna humble you. And when you come to the US, just be open-minded, as everyone has said, like, yes, you know what you might want to do. Fortunately, we all wanted to be, pharmacists, doctors, and then we ended up doing that. But it's okay if you come to the US and you're like, hey, I want to do this. But then you realize along the way that that's not your true passion. You wanted to do it maybe because your parents forced you to do it, or, someone forced you to do it. And so you change your mind. As long as it's what you stay true to yourself, as long as it's something you truly want to do, just do it. Yeah. Like for me, I came in wanting to do biology. That's what I wanted to do. My parents didn't force me. But then I realized that I also wanted to do psychology. So I added that as a major. And then I always say I wanted to be a doctor, but I also wanted to do public health because I want to do global health. And then I added that, so it's okay to be flexible.
Right. Thank you so much.
All those skills.
Yeah. What about you, Dr. Idris?
I would say, one, education in the U.S. is not easy. I feel like we're coming with this misconception that, oh, yeah, it's going to be easy. Like, it's a walk in the park. It certainly hasn't been a walk in the park for me.
Right?
So you're going to have some struggles academically. Try to spend a lot of time to figure out a system for you to succeed academically. The other thing is be open-minded. Like I said, it's an experience. And for you to really benefit the most from the experience, you have to be very open-minded and flexible. I think that open-minded to learning different things, different cultures, and different systems. And that would truly benefit you. And flexibility from the perspective of, like Sheila said, like life is going to take you, you're going to find different doors that are going to be open to you. And you really got to be able to, decipher if you're going to go one way or the other way, but just be flexible in whatever direction life takes you.
Right. And I want to add to that too, like be flexible, but stay focused, because it's easy to end up doing too many things and then you end up doing nothing, and then of course, that's actually when there's going to be that waste of your parents' money, so be flexible, be very open-minded, but you have to stay focused and know your end goal. You can do you can take so many routes to the same end goal. So just try to make sure that you're focused on that end goal. Right. So now let's talk about any projects that you guys have, especially that are geared towards, international students coming over to America. I mean, it's all about giving back and stuff like that. So I'm not sure if you guys want to talk about any things that, not necessarily big projects, but any things that you're currently doing now that, can inspire or help other future international students that are coming to America, and also how they can reach you guys. So Dr. Idris, do you have anything?
I don't have anything particularly that I'm doing. I'm very big on mentorship. I don't have a specific a platform. If anyone finds me to be someone that can be resourceful to any individual, very open to having conversations with them. If they get a hold of me via this podcast, they can certainly reach out to you and get my contact information from you. And I'm certainly open to having conversations with individuals and sharing my experiences and my insights as to how to navigate the journey. But I don't currently have. It's a goal of mine to have something in the future, but nothing concrete at the moment.
Sure. Thank you very much for that. And for all the listeners, I will definitely have Dr. Idris's contact information and Dr. Sheila as well. I'll have both their contact information in the show notes and on the website as well. These are two extremely resourceful people, and I highly recommend them, for anything that, especially that has to do with, career development. Even if you're here already and you are either in medicine or pharmacy, career development for international students as well, just that experience and mentorship, on any and everything. These are really two people that I'll highly recommend. So what about you, Dr. Sheila?
Yeah. So I started this website last year where, I am an international student who got into medical school in the US as an international student. And I understand the struggles, and it was tough, even just finding the list of schools, or even just believing that I could go there. 99% of people told me I would not get into med school, but thank God I did. So I started a website. It's www.SheilaEnohMD.com. And you can reach me at info@SheilaEnohMD.com to talk more about it. But pretty much the purpose of this website, it's a consulting service where, I talk about my experience. I pretty much mentor. I look at personal statements. I come up with a list of schools that accept international students, which was a struggle of mine. I didn't have that. And then I also offer mock interviews. And the services are free, so you can check that out. So yeah, that's what I've been working on. And I just want to also mention, I know we all have mentioned how our families have sponsored us, but I also want to let all of the listeners know that if you don't have that, as we all have mentioned, there are scholarships. I have like close friends who still got into law school, like, they excelled and they did well without having the financial support. Like, they found ways to get scholarships. Even if you are an international student, there are scholarships out there for international students.
Right. Well, thank you so much.
And you can really explore those options even while applying to schools before you actually, gain admissions. I know a couple of friends who came to school in the U.S. on a full ride,
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So, there are schools that, I think it really is just being broad in your application and applying to a variety of different schools. And again, having resources like the educational advising centers in your different countries can certainly give you more insight as to how to go about that whole process of, finding schools that provide funding, how to make yourself competitive for funding. A lot of them would probably require very high, grades in high school, but also SAT scores and things of that sort. But there are programs that will provide funding for you to go to school. And once you get here, you continue to find other opportunities for you to obviously, you have to do well academically for you to maintain that funding. But while you're here, you can continue to, explore additional opportunities for you to, obtain additional funding. I'm sure, actually, talked about her experience, potentially having an NIH grant, but for master's programs, for example, there are teaching assistant programs that
search, all of that,
so there are a ton of resources that, again, it doesn't hurt to ask. The worst case, and you keep asking until potentially there's a yes that comes out of someone's mouth. So it doesn't hurt to ask, but if you don't ask, there's no way you can know what's available to you.
Right. And I want to add one last thing to that, or what you said, Dr. Idris and Dr. Sheila as well. There are a lot of opportunities out there, and we have to put a lot of emphasis on that, broadening your application, because I know way back then, and I'm sure it's even worse now, with social media exposure and people like the flashy lives, a lot of us were looking at those cities that were popping, right? Like no one wants to go to Alabama or Mississippi, like you want to go to, I remember when my brother, he was like, it's either California or Florida, like, Miami, LA, you want a school that's popping, you want a city that you can have fun and stuff like that. But unfortunately, everybody else wants to go there, right? So the chances that you will actually have those opportunities are very low. But you have to really broaden your options, like explore all of those schools that, even if you want to, don't only look at Harvard, for example, right? Like, look at other schools, because believe me, a degree from Harvard and a degree from another school, depending on the profession, is this, like, no one cares, So, it's a good reputable school and stuff, but you should be able to make sure that if you're choosing a school as well, your bank account is like accommodating that choice, So
all your scholarships.
Right. And the scholarships that they offer, I'd rather go to a school down south in Albuquerque, or something like that, if I'm having a full ride, than to go to Harvard and then I bankrupt my parents in the first year and then I'm out of status the second year, So you just have to make sure that even if you want to be in Miami or Florida or whatever, believe me, you can always take a flight and go there and come back. Or you can end up being there when you're done with school. Hey, you don't know what opportunities in life will bring your way. There's always a way out. So don't be stuck up on, social media is very easy to paint a picture that's not actually what it is, So don't be stuck up on all these big cities and stuff. Like, explore the smaller cities that have really good reputable universities that support international education and international students and stuff like that. So I don't know if there's any last word that you guys have before we round up.
I always joke about this. I always say that it'd be interesting to see how different my journey would be if I went to a big city for school.
Right.
I can tend to be very social, right?
Right.
Toledo is just a very good atmosphere for me because there was not a whole lot to do.
There wasn't a whole lot. That's true. We had Alu parties. We always went every time. The same people.
And if you want to go, sometimes we turn up in the library.
Right.
Like, I remember back then, like, I had a lot of times to watch soccer in the library.
Right.
an hour and a half, you go to the student union and watch soccer. You have a little computer in one little room and watch soccer with your friends. But, jokingly, yes, I do. I do kind of wonder what life would have been if I went to like school in DC or
or
one of those.
Right. What about you, Dr. Sheila?
Just a funny story also, like, thank God, like when I got into med school, I got into a couple of schools, and one of the places was Emory in Atlanta. And so I ended up turning Emory. I mean, Pittsburgh is like a great med school. I'm glad I got there, but I turned down Emory. The main reason I was like, man, it's in Atlanta, you know.
Right?
I do not know if I'm going to be so focused in Atlanta. And Pittsburgh I was leaning towards Emory, like, I thought I was going to go to Emory. And then I thought about it somewhere and I was like, you know, like, let me just go to my quiet Pittsburgh and go to school. You know? And Pittsburgh was better ranked too.
Right, so right. Hey, look at you now, right?
Like ranking didn't matter at that point because I was like, I want to go to Emory. It's Emory. The CDC is next door.
Yeah. Right.
But I thought about it. I'm like, my dear, just carry yourself and go to Pittsburgh. So, like, when you leave school, you go home, you study. You leave school, you go to the library.
Yeah. I mean, I was in, when I first came, I was in, like, Livonia, Michigan. Not many people even know where Livonia, Michigan is.
Where is that?
The only thing that made that city relevant was the small university that was there, honestly. That was the only, I mean, Toledo was like a city to me, believe me. Even though it was still like a village. Like, Toledo was like a city to me. You know, but the good thing is that, like I mentioned, like, if I wanted to have fun, I just traveled and then I came back. You know, I feel like that was better to me because if I was in a bigger city, I don't know what I would have done with myself, you know, but thank goodness, at least we survived, right? So, I mean, Dr. Sheila, you're a medical doctor.
Different podcasts.
Right? Right. So, I mean, Dr. Sheila, you're a medical doctor. Dr. Idris, you're a pharmacist, a very accomplished one. I'm a pharmacist. And it just goes to show that at least we achieve what we stuck out for, right? And now that's not all of the story. That is not all of the story for sure. The first hurdle is getting into the US. Now, the second hurdle is really getting into the professional programs that you really want to get. I feel like the professional programs that you want to get in, and I feel like that's actually more difficult than even getting to the US because I mean the stress that you go through, and that's something that I look forward to us talking about in another episode because I feel like you both will be very, very resourceful towards that. I mean, oh my God, like when I think of the stress and the trauma that we go through, you know. Yeah, like your immigration, it's like immigration too. On the other hand, it's like if you don't get in, you're going back home, bro. Like you're going back home. So it's like you have to, the pressure, right? The pressure of all of that. And thankfully, we all got into the programs that we sought after and we're here today. So that will be another episode. That will be another topic that I feel like will be very resourceful, especially coming from both of you. So I definitely look forward to it.
Thank you, Dr. Funback.
Thank you guys, actually. So unfortunately, we have come to the end of this conversation, and I hope that it was very resourceful to anyone out there who is aspiring to be an international student and travel to the US. And I feel like it's not that much of a different process traveling to the UK as well. But I hope to talk to someone in the UK for them to share their experiences as well. But I hope that, you know, we can take this word and take this advice and take these experiences and, you know, share within our circles and help one another as, you know, we traverse this life in the US of A, you know. And I really want to thank both of you, Dr. Sheila and Dr. Idris, for spending your time with me. It was really pleasant talking to you guys, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Thank you.
Thank you very much to both of you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's it for today. Thank you for listening to our show. If you want to participate in the show or find out more helpful resources, then visit www.livingafricanpodcast.com for more information or email us at hello@livingafricanpodcast.com. Also, don't forget to connect with us on all social media platforms at Living African Podcast. You can also connect with Anyoh directly on Facebook or Instagram at Anyoh PharmD. Thanks again for listening, and let's not forget to be more understanding and nicer to one another.